we've had a handful of conversations with you, and after we hang up, we're like, wow, I wish we recorded that because there's so much to learn. You're so captivating, and there's so many lessons there and wisdom there that we are left amazed. And this year we're in May we're doing Sunflower Mission again with Eat Justice. So we're raising money in May, and we wanted to kind of just be able to tell your story. Where you're at, where you came from, where you want to go, because I believe it's a disservice to not tell your story because it's so amazing. And so that's how we're going to get it started. We're just going to have a conversation. This will further promote Sunflower Mission and further promote e-justice and all the good that we do.
I'm more at home when it's a conversation. Life should always be a conversation.
Yeah, so it's more of just a conversation because it's such an amazing, conversation every time we talk. But I had to do some, little background research on you, and I stumbled upon your Wikipedia, and I'm just blown away by all these accolades, and just to get to know your story a little bit more. And I think out of everything you've done here, which is amazing, the one that popped out the most was your black belt in Taekwondo. I did not know
There's a story behind that.
It's amazing, everything that you've accomplished. But yeah, that one jumped out. I'm like, yeah, you not only is she amazing, but you can't mess with her either.
There's a definite story. I was quite embarrassed when at 30 something I was put in a timeout in a public competition at the Texas level. I was actually forced to kneel down, face the wall, while my opponent recovered. So that was probably the most humiliating episode of my life in front of thousands of people. It is quite humiliating.
Was that a passion you took up in your kind of adult life, or did you practice martial arts since a child?
No. I had no plan of doing martial art and frankly, no time. Texas Instrument asked me to go back to the headquarters of Texas Instrument in Dallas, right? Because they had a really tough challenge and for a year they couldn't solve it. So they reached out to me in Houston and said, can you please spend 6 months in Dallas trying to solve the problem and also train the problem solving to the engineers there. So the problem is I was already married at the time. And I'm up here in Dallas all by myself in an apartment. What the heck do you do at night, at 9, 10 o'clock when you are done with work and you still have plenty of energy left and you are married? You got 3 choices. You either go to the bar and drink the heck out of it, you go dancing and have a blast, or you channel energy into something positive that can be a win-win. So I decided, okay, I got to go do something that has to do with exercise and martial art. And so that's what I did. That's the reason I went there to do that, to give me a form of exercise, physical fitness, and also to make sure I unleash whatever energy I have in me so that I don't go down the wrong track. You're living away for 6 months without your husband. You guys understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Rich is taking up Tai Chi or something right now. Is it?
Yeah, I did. I'm on week 4, and it's been an absolute blessing. Not even so much the martial arts side. I'm sure you know this. It's more the applications to life.
Exactly right.
And the lessons and how you approach life. I mean, yesterday was probably one of the most moving sessions I've ever had. I'm still sitting with it. So yeah, I'm taking a similar path, just different art.
Yeah, it is definitely a life lesson because after I knocked down my opponent, and to this day, 20 something years later, more 30 years something later, I still don't know what happened. But the fact that I was humiliated publicly by forcing, that's just a rule. It's not intentional, right? But during the 25 minutes that I knew in front of and faced the wall, basically, I thought about it. And then afterward, when I got out of course, I was disqualified from the competition. I got out in the parking lot, and my 8th degree master of Taekwondo saw me in the parking lot. He sort of motioned me over and he said, you feel pretty sad that you didn't win because you were disqualified. I said, absolutely. And he said, but it feels pretty good knocking the opponent out, did it? Mm-hmm. So the lesson is there's always something good that can come out of a bad situation. Right? And he was trying to tell me that. And he actually later, because I was so good, he was so disappointed that I decided to go back to Houston because his plan was to train me to take over his entire school. Because he said I had such a natural ability of martial art that I didn't even know I had.
Yeah. So that's kind of like a little microcosm of turning, a situation and finding it's positive. If you look back on your life, what is like the biggest example that you can give from your life where you were in a situation that most people would define as difficult or negative, and how do you turn that into something positive to contribute to the world?
I will talk about my professional life here a little bit. People look at my professional accomplishment and think it's been smooth sailing. It's far from the truth. Probably the hardest moment in my life was the year 2000, 1999, switching over to 2000. I was sitting that morning at 5 a.m. in the morning. I realized that the phone call that I just received was the call to let me know that my father just passed away. And I just saw him. I flew in to see him the night before. At that moment, I was emotionally overwhelmed and frankly physically exhausted. I was down to like 95 pounds, right? Flying back and forth between Dallas and Houston to visit him. And professionally, I was in the ditch because we have spent 3 years, $150 million to do a project. And the product, when it came out, did not pass qualification. The quality was not good enough for me to ramp it. And that was $1 billion revenue stream. And I had worked on it with the team for literally 9 months. I had no clue how to fix the problem. So at that moment, I had to decide whether I go to the hospital and take care of my father's funeral, or I get in front of the leadership team of TI who flew down to hear from me how I'm going to fix this. I chose to go to TI and did a presentation. And then after that, I got out and I told my team of engineers, we will fix this problem. Your guys get together and try these 3 things. And I turned around and I told my assistant, I'm going to disappear for 48 hours. Don't tell the team what happened to me personally. I will go take care of my family matter and I will return in 48 hours. Before I left, though, I told the team, if they fix this problem, I will dance for them, right? And so the point is, even when you are physically tired, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually dead, and professionally in the ditch, don't lose hope. And don't lose faith in the capability of the people who trust you, who follow you, and who will do everything they can to help you. And I think I never lost the conviction and the confidence in my team of engineers worldwide. And they did come through, and I did dance for them.
So you can always choose to dance is the lesson.
Yeah, the only problem is they thought I was going to do some other form of dancing, but it turned out to be a ballroom dance.
Beautiful.
They did enjoy it. Without them, I would be really in the ditch.
So I wanted to give our viewers a little bit of a story of you, just to let them know who you are. You were born in Nha Trang, Vietnam. You came over to the United States when you were 14. And then the accomplishments I was talking about was you graduated valedictorian from your high school at 16, so on, so on. And then you went to school at the University of Texas in Austin. Afterwards, you worked as an engineer in Texas Instrument, and you had a long, beautiful career there. And then you went into philanthropy, and this is how we met. Is that we support Sunflower Mission last year. I think we raised a total of around 25,000, and we're hoping to raise a little bit more because we added on a few stores, which would be amazing. And then Sunflower Mission does something called a work camp, where volunteers go for 2 weeks to Vietnam to build a school or several schools and get down and get to work. And Rich and I are doing that this year in a month. So we're excited for that. I wanted to go back a little further, right? I wanted to kind of talk about your childhood a little bit, right? Can you share a bit about your childhood in Vietnam and experiences, and anything that inspired you to pursue your dreams and influence to today? How was it like back then in Vietnam?
Okay, out of respect, before I forget, I do want to say something. I so much appreciate what you and Rich, both of you, Rich and Tony, are leaving a very busy business behind the scene. As owners of that business, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scene that need your guys, but you chose to spend precious time on this work camp and the full work camp. So I am, at a personal level, I'm so grateful for doing that. Now, back to your question, just a few minor comments. I know that what Wikipedia said that I was born in Nha Trang. You know that Wikipedia, I didn't have anything to do with it. People collected
Right.
information and put that together. I was actually born in Saigon, not Nha Trang. Nha Trang is my father's hometown. And then I actually came to America when I was 12, not 14, 12 turning 13. So that's that. But to answer your question directly, I didn't grow up with a father in the house. My father was always working somewhere else. But he had this crazy dream. And this, you going back, 60 something years ago, he was not a very educated man. He didn't finish college. But his dream was to make sure that his daughters, not his son, but his daughter, will be well educated. He wanted one to be a doctor, wanted to be an engineer, and wanted to be an attorney. Right? And for me, his dream was for me to become an engineer, to enter into the equivalent of University of Technology today, which was called Đại học Phú Thọ ngày xưa. So that was a crazy dream. But I grew up working by my father's side. After TED, he flew back to Saigon, and we didn't have enough money. So I learned to build a house with him, brick by brick. I was literally 8 or 9 at the time. Okay, it took him a few years to save up enough money, and then he and I built that house together along with my sister. And then as I got older, he decided that he's gonna watch after my education. So when I turned 10, finished 5th grade, he flew back, and for 3 months he watched over my study, because when you finish 5th grade in Vietnam, in order to enter a really good public school, you better pass an extremely difficult exam. And every day he would stand outside of the school waiting to see how I did in the exam. And then, but he didn't have any confidence I would pass enough, because both of my sisters didn't make it. And they ended up going to private school. So he actually enrolled me into a private school, because that private school required a starting day much earlier before the result came out. So I attended a private school, but luckily my exam result came out good enough. Not good enough to be at the top, but decent enough to get into that public school. And then from that moment on, as I start my 6th grade and 7th grade, those 2 grades at that school, and then at 7th grade, as the school was about to complete in April, I left Vietnam after the war, ended in 1960. But from the time 6th grade and 7th grade, I worked with my father in a bus transportation business, selling bus tickets on the bus. And that was a really tough job, trying to juggle my middle school and working on the business to try to make an earning with my husband, my father. And I think that's where all the confidence, the life skill, the hard work. And when we left Vietnam, we didn't leave with him. He was stuck behind. But I made a promise with him that I will study. And I chose engineering not because I wanted to be an engineer. I hated engineering. I wanted to be a doctor. But I honor my commitment to my father. That's how I became an engineer. And once I became an engineer, the only path is to be the best that I can, so that I can help produce chips that help doctors do their things. So basically, that's the story. Does that make sense?
It does. This is beautiful. It wasn't until my late adulthood that I realized that my parents were kids at one point, right? And what I mean by that is that I started asking them these questions about their journey when they were younger and what it was like. And what I was able to do is put myself in their shoes, try my best, and that changes the game, especially when you are an immigrant, right? When, at that age, you move to a new country, and it's quite a journey. I don't know if you knew English then, probably not, but you knew one thing, and that was hard work and the values of Vietnam and your father, right? So, like, when you moved to this new country, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and like how did you overcome them?
So both you and Rich probably can identify with many things that I said here. Number one, let's use this opportunity also to educate the people who will listen to this and help them gain more insight. Maybe educate is the wrong term, maybe sharing more insight. First, there's a huge difference between being an immigrant and a refugee. An immigrant comes to this country by choice to seek better opportunities, but they didn't have to. A refugee is forced out of their country either because they are going to be brutalized or there's a lot of story. I won't go there, right? So they didn't have a choice. Either they get out or they lose their life or they will be in prison, blah, blah, blah. So all of us, Tony, your parents and I and my family came here as refugee. Okay, so none of us spoke a single word of English. This was not planned. This was a decision my father made literally in a moment of notice when he realized that we are losing one city after another. And if we stay behind, being children and women or girls, there's nothing good that can come out of it. So we left in a hurry. And because we didn't have any money, he stayed behind figuring, okay, maybe I can get some money out, because a family of 9 started life all over in a different country, without a language, without a house, without a job, without the ability to speak and understand. It's a total disaster. So the challenge is the language. That is the biggest challenge. The second challenge as a kid of 12 is not having time or parental guidance to even know what the heck is happening, right? Because they are trying. My mom, my sister probably had even a bigger challenge because they are older. It's harder to pick up a new language, right? And my mom especially didn't have her husband besides her, didn't have her elder sons besides her. So what right do I have to expect anything from my mother? So until the day I graduated, I said, Mom, you need to take a night off to attend. Tomorrow, can you take a night off? She worked night shift. And she said, what for? I said, because I'm graduating. She said, you graduating already? Yes. She had no idea until that night, under the beautiful sky and beautiful star, in front of 3,000, because the graduation was outdoor. I got up there and delivered my valedictorian speech. That's when my mom realized my academic achievement. She had no idea. But what right do I have to expect her to have any idea? I don't have any, because she was struggling herself. And I'm lucky that I still had a family who was loving and caring and provide a shelter for me to grow up. So basically, that's the challenge. And as far as the driving factor, you might wonder how does a 12-year-old thrive like that? My job was very simple. Took care of my younger brother, sister, and nephew, cook for the whole family, go to work at night to save for college, and then make sure that I stay straight, right, and graduate high school. What drove me was simple 2 things. Number 1, I will honor my words with my father. He has lost everything. The only thing he has left is the belief that his daughter will keep her promise. Number 2, no matter who I will become tomorrow, what title I carry, what recognition I receive, my hair will always be black. My skin will always be yellow. What I do reflects what Vietnam is through the eyes of many people. And I will not bring shame to the country that greeted me at birth and shape my core values. Those are the 2 driving factors.
It's powerful. We talk a lot about sacrificial generation, and to listen to how you thought about sacrificial generation from a refugee perspective is really powerful in terms of representing your country. It's not just you or your family, because like you say, immigrants, they choose to come here. So my dad, from the Dominican Republic, he chose to come here. So it was about him and his family. Versus a refugee, it's a country issue. You're being forced out of your homeland. To know that you represent that in a bigger way, that was really, really illuminating.
Yeah, no, thank you. And your dad and Tony's parents have had a hard time. Whether your dad, even if he came here as an immigrant, he still had to start life over, not, with his children. So different perspective. But I just want to make sure, because of all the tension right now at the border and everything, I want to share the different perspective of an immigrant versus a refugee.
Yeah, we should have.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think what the biggest thing I got out of that, how it helped me when you were talking, was you don't know it at the time, right? So when I was in high school, I would, do sports and go to all this stuff. And, my parents never attended. And I never wondered why at the time. But I knew, like, oh, as a kid, you're not fully aware of everything going on yet. And you kind of resent them a little bit for not attending certain things. And it wasn't until my adulthood where you just explained so profoundly that who am I to be able to expect that out of parents who came here because they were forced to come here and for a better life, and all that struggles that they've gone through, and then they have to work 80 hours, 70 hours a week. So that was a beautiful explanation of my childhood and what I had to also heal growing up.
Yeah. And think about it. Scientifically, people know that when you cross that border, 12, 13 is a fragile age for a girl, but it's also the point where picking up a new language can be very challenging for many people, right? Not only your parents have to work, they also have to deal with all the things that make their life miserable because they cannot speak, they cannot understand, they cannot describe, and they have to teach themselves that English is. So whatever hardship I had, my sister and my mom had twice as much.
Beautiful. So you're in the States and you have a really impactful career as an engineer in Texas Instruments, and you then start a nonprofit later on, right?
Yeah.
And
So yeah, that's correct. So I think the first nonprofit that I got involved with was actually in 1990 when my elder son was 6 and my younger son was 2 years old. To do that nonprofit at that age is kind of insane, especially with a career that required 80 hours. But it wasn't my idea, to be very clear. I was giving a talk at a conference, a technical conference, and another person approached me after hearing my talk, actually approached me and say, would you consider starting this nonprofit called Mona Foundation with me? And at that point of my, like I shared earlier, my father was pretty ill, 2 little kids. I'm flying back and forth between Dallas and Houston, and a job that required me to travel internationally, and a sick father, right? My father came over later in case you wonder what happened. So I said, look, I need to deal with this first. I need to take care of my father first, and then when it's time, then I will join. So a few months later, I joined. So that was the first nonprofit. And then you probably asked what other nonprofit in
yeah,
2000. And,
it's really
yeah,
just about how you first became involved in nonprofit work, right?
yeah.
After being in this company for so long, and what motivated you to start the nonprofits that you had.
Yeah. So that first request to start the nonprofit called Mona Foundation. By the way, Mona Foundation, of course, celebrates 25th anniversary this year. 25 years, a quarter of a century, and educating over 4.2 million students, right? That's remarkable. And at the work camp, Mona Foundation Board of Director will be there. So you will get to meet them, okay?
Awesome.
Oh, nice.
So after that, so Mona Foundation is about education with a bias toward girls. Of course, being a girl, 12 to 13 in another country, I know exactly how hard it is for some of these girls in other countries. So Mona Foundation do things in about, over the 25 years, we had projects in 26 different countries. So that was the motivation because I was asked, it aligned with my values, so I went and joined. And then the second, I'm trying to remember here, the second one is Science National Honor Society. That was started in In America, we have National Honor Society at many high schools, but we don't have one that focuses in STEM. And without STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, is the foundation of national security. Okay? And we won't go there because it takes too long to elaborate on that. And so I went and with some other people formed and served on the founding board of that. The first meeting was held at TI. And today, Science National Art Society have, if I remember, almost maybe more than 1,100 chapters across all the high school in America. And then the third one was actually Sunflower Mission in 2000. And by that time, I realized, okay, we've done Science National Society for America. We've done Mona Foundation for other country. I would not be fair if I don't do something for Vietnam. So then that's how Sunflower Mission was birthed in 2000. And then in 2000, I was asked to serve on the founding board of what they called at the time Asian Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund, which then changed name to APIA Scholars. And over the last, since founded in 2003 to now, we've given out $100 million in scholarship. But for Science National Honor Society and APIA, I only serve on the founding board for 3 years. I don't stay with it other than an honorary member for Science National Honor Society. But Mona Foundation and Sunflower Mission, I stay actively engaged to this day. And I say actively engage, I'm talking about at the leadership level and then also at the detail level.
Let's talk about Sunflower Mission a little bit. The background of Sunflower Mission, what impact do you aim to create with Sunflower Mission? How do you align it with your visions and the strategic goals, of your leadership throughout your whole life? Like, can you talk a little bit more about Sunflower Mission?
Yeah. So you notice a common theme among the four nonprofit. It has to do with education and STEM. So I absolutely believe with every fiber of my being that education is the key to elevate people and change the path of their life, regardless of where, how, what family they are born into, right? Without the education, I would not be where I am today. So you gotta start with that. If you don't believe that it's a waste of your time. And I think you guys have heard me. The first time we met, I asked you that. If you don't believe in education, don't support Sunflower Mission because there's so many causes out there worth pursuing. So that's that. Now, when I established Sunflower Mission, there's a strong connection between Sunflower Mission and Mona Foundation. Mona Foundation wanted to get into Vietnam. Vietnam is a communist country. And you're talking about 22 years ago, navigating the landmine of politics and all the baggage, all the historical lessons and hurt and pain and all of that would be very difficult. And we might not succeed and we would destroy Mona Foundation. I say, let me go off and figure out how to establish Sunflower Mission separately. And so there's a close relationship between Mona Foundation and Sunflower Mission for 17 years of the 22 years of Sunflower Mission life. So that's that. The third thing is Sunflower Mission is celebrating 22 years this year. The work camp, this year marks 20th anniversary of the work camp. The reason I mentioned that is Sunflower Mission was never just about Vietnam. The question for me at a personal level is how do I create a bridge that allow generation over here, generation that are of my children, to make a connection to Vietnam in a positive way, not through the image and the story and the hatred and the resentment and the anger of what happened in the war. But I cannot change the past. I must change the future. How do I create that connection? Not from an intellect only, but also from a heart perspective. So the work camp is a big part of it. That's how the work camp was born, to provide a bridge. And the first kid that was sent on the work camp was my son at the age of 10 without me. You must go back, find out who you really are. Don't believe that you are better than any kid. You're just lucky. I want you to go as a boy, but come back as a man. Okay? Putting my son as the test to see whether this boy can become the man that I want him to be and have that connection with Vietnam. And realize all the historical story, but at the same time be proud of who he is and understand the ability to give back, to move it forward, not backward. So that's the story behind the work camp. And as far as leveraging my executive, Sunflower Mission was established from the very beginning with 100-year, this is kind of crazy, with 100-year sustainability. That is kind of insane. To start a nonprofit, nobody even know how to raise a dime. Everybody is still young or either pregnant or about to start a family or with toddlers and dream of 100 years sustainability. That stemmed from my corporate and my executive leadership.
Beautiful. I read the essay that your 10-year-old son at the time wrote after attending that work camp. And I just wanted to read a little bit of it. He goes, towards the end, we went to a temple of Buddha. At the temple, we met two girls that worked there. They had 18 brothers and sisters that hung around the temple. They were children and elderly people that begged and sold stuff to feed themselves. Standing there, I finally understood why Sunflower Mission was so dedicated to helping Vietnam's children to become more educated. How do you think he was feeling at that moment at 10 years old and really grasping what this is all about?
You know, people say that a person's value, a person's core foundation and values in life is pretty well established by the age of 12 or 13. He was 10. He was raised as an American, where he attended private school with Caucasian, 100% Caucasian. He was the first non-Caucasian that they allowed in that school, as a matter of fact. His childhood was very that way. But I need to prepare him. I need to give that thing that I talked about. How do you can make the connection? So I think the last sentence in that article was, as I stood there, I know what Sunflower Mission, or something like that, know what Sunflower Mission needs to do to help, and I feel like I belong there. I think that's the transformation. Realizing, soaking in the information, internalizing it, reflecting on your experience, and arrive at a conclusion that this is something that I can do even as a kid. And I do it not out of pity, but out of pride, because I belong there. My son's first trip overseas to Vietnam, not as a vacationer, but as a work camp participant. He went there to work under the intense heat. I shaved his head because he had so much hair. There was no clean water, right? This is about 20 years ago. Vietnam was a very different. The iPhone wasn't invented until about 17 years ago. So time was different. I need to prepare him. But I think to answer your question, go as a boy, come back as a man. I think he did turn into and have that depth of thinking and decided what he needs to do. To this day, he's still very engaging in doing things pro bono for Sunflower Mission.
That was gonna be my next question. You started this with a 100-year plan, and the work camp is 20 years old, and your son went in at 10, he's 30. How do you see the ripple effect in the community and the people around him in terms of taking that journey over 20 years?
I think he will be at the work camp as well this year again. I think he has gone to almost every work camp. A lot of time his schedule and his work doesn't allow him to attend the full 2 weeks, but he attend the key days, usually the first week of the work camp. I think now we have a generation, my son is just one small example, right? Over the last 20 years, we have so many of these kids that go to the work camp and become part of what we call SEEDS, Student Expanding Education by Donating Services. And that's not a name that I gave. It was a name that my son gave to represent the seeds of future sunflowers. And he founded that organization with 2 of his other high schoolers. In 2000, he first approached me with that idea. Almost, 16 years ago, right? Seeds was formed. And today, the generation of seeds are 10 times more capable, more committed, and more engaging with Sunflower Mission than even my sons and my second boy at their age. The youngest director that just got elected into Sunflower Mission board is a 3rd-year medical student. And he grew up as part of the seeds, going through the work camp. And in my room today, in my office, there's another seeds member sitting next to me because he cared enough to come here to set up the laptop. Because I don't use laptop, I use my iPad for Zoom, and iPad doesn't have the best camera. And the seeds said, no, we gotta have the best video, we gotta have the best audio, we are gonna come and set things up for you. Delivering excellence always starts with caring. And I use that as a small example of how caring, that initial caring for my son, who then went off to establish seeds, and now many generations of seeds have come through, and they continue to care at even a deeper level.
It's so beautiful. That's actually what I was about to say, how your dad's decision to care about your education started 3 nonprofits, which then spawned off Seeds, which has a community of Vietnamese Americans doing the work that they're doing today. It's really beautiful to think about where it started, just one person's commitment to doing something for their daughter.
Sunflower Mission is so fortunate that we actually have Seeds. That was organization is the youth board. And we are so fortunate that our Seeds are incredibly capable. And when I say capable, I'm not talking about intellectual capacity only, guys. That's just a given. I'm talking about the caring, the capacity to learn, to grow, and to give back, even when they are in high school, through college, and to this day, right? That is not easy. That is not something that you can really teach through books. That is something that you have to teach through deed and their parents' commitment to engage. That's why the culture of Sunflower Mission starts with family, right? And as we embark in the next 20 years, the logo, The vision statement, the mission statement, the value statements are no longer my logo, my mission, my value. It is theirs. It is the seed's logo. It is their mission statement. It is their value. This is their vision. It has their fingerprints all over it.
Beautiful. So we talked about a little bit about this 100 years with Sunflower Mission. Um, at the 100 year mark, what would be success to you?
You know, that is, and I often think about that. I often think about that. You know, I will be so dead. I will be so dead. And it will happen at the turn of the next century. You realize that, right? Because Sunflower Mission is 2002. 100 year is what? 2001, right? It's the next 10th century. So I will be really dead. And I cannot understand and I cannot foresee or predict what education will be in the future. But success would mean that there will still be a Sunflower Mission. The operational pillars might be completely different, but certain things cannot change. Number one, it has to be about education. And education is not about academic education, guys. That's only half the story. It has to be about life education. It has to be about humanity education. That's why every school we build in Vietnam always have these 6 words. Tiên học lễ, hậu học văn. Means first, humanity, second, science. That's not the liberal translation, but that's the meaning. So I hope it will always stay with education. And that means humanity has to be a core part of it. The culture of Sunflower Mission is about family. And family is not defined as blood related. It is a community. So I hope that will always stay. And in order to have a community caring for each other will always have to be a fundamental value. And then, so that's the soft thing. As far as the hard thing, who knows? The next graduate of Sunflower Mission would be someone who goes on to invent something that cures a disease. Someone who takes artificial intelligence to a next level without losing the importance of humanity, right? Someone who becomes the future leader of Vietnam tomorrow or a future leader of America tomorrow. So, and someone who goes on to have a pattern that changes how we work, how we live, how we collaborate, such as the iPhone today, right? So that's the dream. I don't define the dream. I just want the foundational values to stay intact. And it must be humanity first, science second.
So the hard things will come and go with the sun rising and falling, but the soft things are here forever.
Correct. Absolutely. That's a beautiful way to say it. You're just like the seed, like you take a seed, you take a kid like myself out of Vietnam, right? And I grew up, this year I will celebrate 62 birthday. I left when I was 12. So I have spent 50 years of my life in America. I am an American. I am an American executive. But you'll never be able to take that Vietnamese seed out of my heart. That's why I do many things, the things I do.
Beautiful. I have just one more question. I always like to end it on an advice to others, right? So what advice would you give to other immigrants or refugees who aspire to be in leadership roles in either nonprofits or corporate boards?
That's corporate board is a huge challenge, right? Corporate public board, which I serve on, is a very difficult path. And especially for someone without a C title, it's almost an impossible path. And someone that is a woman, minority, that adds a layer of challenges. I think I was able to get onto a corporate public board in a very unconventional way. It was about my reputation in public that has to do with executing to excellence, that has to do with authenticity, it has to do with trustworthiness. So when someone at high level reached out to me, came down to visit me and asked me would I consider to serve on public board, after 3 hours of discussing something about that has nothing to do with public board. So it just came out as a pure coincidence. So the story, the point there is life cannot be completely planned. Life is a collection of a bunch of pebbles. But each pebble needs to be so good, so shining, so well kept that it shines even among many other pebbles. And when you treat your life like that, whether you are picking up trash or you are sitting in the boardroom, always execute to excellence. So that's my number one advice. Execute to excellence, because people can take many things away from you, but they can never take away that. If you deliver excellence, it will show through. The second point in terms of nonprofit board is don't be afraid to engage with a nonprofit board. But don't worry so much about creating one just so that you can attach your name to it. Okay? I didn't start Mona Foundation. Somebody approached me and I joined full force, right? You learn so much, and it is a safe haven to make mistakes in leaderships. I made many mistakes at Mona Foundation, but I also have made many right mistakes, right decisions. And you learn, and when you give back from the heart, from the core authenticity, not because you're trying to build a name, an organization, a foundation with your name attached to it. Don't do that for that reason. Do it because it's the right thing to do. And doing the right thing is never wrong. So those are the two advices I would give you.
I'll always remember to dance amongst the pebbles.
Yeah. I'm telling you, when I was 14, I didn't learn this story until years later. One of the manager told me, when I was 14, I started my first job in a restaurant called Bill Barretti's. And my job was a janitor, keeping everything clean. And they paid me, I think it was like $1 something an hour. One day, all of a sudden, my compensation was double. But I didn't understand why until years later. And what happened was I was cleaning and I was sweeping the floor. And then the owner of that restaurant came down and saw me in a corner and asked the kitchen manager, who's that little girl over there? And she told the story, and then he turned around and said, double her salary. I was sweeping the floor, guys. But I was sweeping the floor to the best of my ability, because everything I do has my name on it. And my name is not something that can be compromised. And I think that is probably the third driving factor in everything I do.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. As always, you leave us, with a lot of things to think about, and I think you leave us with being better humans for sure.
Yeah, and that's all we can do, guys, right? Because when we stop caring for each other, what else does really matter in life? You never want to go on your dying bed regretting that I didn't treat somebody right. I can guarantee you, if I'm on my dying bed, I will not be worrying about how many patents I didn't file, right? How many more recognition I didn't get. I will be thinking, have I raised my boys to become the human beings that I want them to be, or that they need to be to continue the legacy of caring, of humanity? And the second thing I would be worrying about is, have I done right by everybody? I can guarantee you that. You know how I know that? I have a tendency to forward my life 10 years ahead and look back. And that's how I make decisions. In every business, every personal, I always take myself out of the situation, fast forward 10 years, look back and say, if I have succeeded at that business opportunity, would I be happy? Even if I succeed and make all the money, if I don't think that I will be happy, then the answer is no, regardless of how much money is involved. So I often think of myself to the day I'm on my lying bed, looking back. What would I be feeling?
That is beautiful.
Tony and Rich, I cannot say enough what each just did last year. Not only did you guys raise money, but you guys came down and really participated and found out who Sunflower Mission is. And that authenticity is really important to me, because like I said, there are 1,000 causes out there that you can choose to support, and they are worth supporting. But you chose to come down to understand and subsequently have several discussions with me, and now decided to go into work camp. As leader, that is the authenticity that I respect. You really want to understand, you really want to know, you really want to see how else you can help. And you cannot do that without seeing it on the ground, guys. So thank you so much for spending that precious time with Sunflower Mission.
Yeah, we thank you for the opportunity to be able to step into it.
Thank you.